so excited. Once again, I feel blessed. I feel like I am the luckiest person in the world to know such amazing people. And I am here right now with Miss Karin Duval. How are you?
I'm great, Tracy. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Karin, why don't you introduce yourself real quick? Who are you? How would you describe yourself?
Wow. That almost changes on a daily basis sometimes.
Exactly.
Um, I am I am a wife and mother. I am a community member. I used to be a director at a leadership program called Leadership East Side, where I worked under phenomenal um, a phenomenal man, James Whitfield, leader in his community. I'm also on the board of the Together Center, which is a nonprofit that houses a bunch of uh, human services in one location, so that when people are needing help, they go to one place where they can find help with housing and food and medical care, and uh, it's it's about whole person health and health equity.
I love that. I love that. So, I know you because, again, I was just blessed to be in your presence. There's like this executive program with Leadership Eastside, the executive, what is
Yeah.
it called? Executive Insight.
Executive insight.
And what I love about it was like one of four different adaptive leadership programs that I've done. And what I can tell you is the concept of adaptive leadership is part of that is what we're pulling into this Bigger Than Me success series.
Mm.
Like right now, it's called the Bigger Than Me success series, achieving racial equity and inclusion in business, education, wealth, and health. And we're moving into session 3, which is on Wednesday in a couple of days. And I just wanted to make sure that I brought you into this conversation because we're bringing in allies. And so
Yeah.
I was like, calling all white people. You're one of my favorite white people. Am I allowed to say that?
Geez, thanks.
You're actually one of my favorite people of any color. It just so happened I your contact information, I tried to pull you in sooner, but your contact information, I had old information on my phone. I
I
think I was
know.
texting someone the wrong Karen. And I was like, wait a minute. I reached out to someone else and I was able to get the right number. So we're good now. I thought of you immediately because this initiative is actually built on 3 principles. It's built
Mhm.
on positive psychology, and you're one of the most positive people I know. It's built on adaptive leadership, this idea of building a safe space for everyone to learn and grow where everyone's perspective is valued.
Mhm.
And it's also built on this concept of self-directed learning. And I'm part of the
Mhm.
International Society of Self-Directed Learning. I just had an interview with Larissa Chuprina. She's actually one of the founders of that institution from many, many moons ago. And it's work that's so important because people have to want to do this work.
Oh yeah.
Self-directed learning, it's about people wanting to do it and deciding that I want to move from where I am to the next phase, to the next phase, and it's not going to be easy,
Right.
right?
Right. That that very much describes where I am today in my own racial journey.
Tell me about that because when I first asked you, now I love you, you love me. We're like, you kind of like me, right? Like I'm one of
I
you.
do.
We're friendly, right?
Yes.
I feel like if my house had burned down, I would come over and be like, Karen, I need a place to stay. I don't think you would turn me away.
Are you kidding? Of course not.
That's
Um,
how close I feel to you. But yet, when I asked you about this initiative, you said to me, what did you say to me? And I need you to say it because I'm going to put you on spotlight here because
right.
this next initiative, this next session 3 is, we're tapping into, we got session 1 was around a case for change.
Yeah.
Session 2 was focused on like that we all can be a part of the change and the importance of telling our stories, bringing coming together for this movement. And what we realized is we can't change anything alone. It was 85% Black people in the second session,
Yeah.
right? Over 85% in the session prior to that. And this session is intentionally around change, accountability, adaptability, but it's really around allies and advocacy, bringing people
Yeah.
in that don't look like us. So
Yeah.
you're here by choice because, but what did you say to me when I said, hey, I want to bring you
I
in?
turned you down. I turned you down 3 times actually, and If anybody knows Tracy, she doesn't take no for an answer. So even after
True. That's not true. Because you weren't really saying no. You were saying you were uncomfortable. That's not the same as no. I don't hear
yeah.
no
Well,
when you say that, right?
I said, I'm not an expert in this. I'm on the voyage. I'm on the path. I fall off the path. I get back on the path. I'm working at this. And I said that the more I learn, the more of a beginner I feel I am. And so I wasn't an expert, and I doubted what I could bring. And then you called me up and you said, no, just be yourself, share who you are and what you're doing, and that's all I want. And I've heard you interview enough people over these last few years that it gave me the confidence to say, yes, I'll do this,
What do you mean by that? What do you mean?
because you are very good at this. You are kind. You are supportive of the people that you're interviewing. You are able to elicit the right stuff from their better selves. And so I thought I was in good hands if I came on.
Well, let me point of clarification. I bring amazing people on the show. I'm really not doing much. The show is called Bigger Than Me because of the people I bring on the show. They're just amazing. I feel like I'm just sitting down having conversations with amazing people. So you just gave me too much credit, but I'll take what part of that I may get a little. There's some divine intervention in my show. I can give you that. But it's really about the people. They come on and they do their thing. And there's a little pre-work where I just say, be yourself.
Yeah.
It's a live show. People gonna get nervous about that. It's a live show. You can't take it back. It's on, projected live on YouTube,
Yep.
and it's like there's nothing to be taken back, right? Because all of our imperfections, that's part of the journey. Oh my God, Karen, can I tell you what happened?
Sure.
I cried on one of my interviews last week.
Wow. Wow.
I was literally, and I mean, that is just so not me. I got choked up for a minute, and I was like, I just talked through it. I was like, whatever I was saying, I don't remember what happened. I don't remember what I was saying. I was talking to the civil rights. This lady, you'll meet her on 9/9. You'll meet her on Wednesday. Dr. Uh, uh, she's Pastor Levon Bracey, Dr. Levon Bracey, and she was talking about. She wrote a book, several books, but her last one was a children's book called A Brave Little Cookie. Her nickname was Cookie growing up, and
Oh my
she
gosh.
was the first Black person to integrate schools in Alachua County. And so she talks about her journey that last year in high school. Oh my God, it was just so moving. And when she talked about, she had said, that she, I mean, they were brutal to her, brutal. She just endured all kind of brutality. And when she told me that five guys like jumped her and like she said, I still have a stitches or something to her in her head right now from the front to the back. And she went to crawl to the principal's office. He wouldn't let her use the phone. She had to go across the street to use the phone. Holler that like it just crazy. She's like, I'm not going back, Dad. But then 4 days later, recuperation, 4 days of letting the stitches heal. She's like, I got to go back. And her dad was like, no, 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 it's okay. She said, I have to go back because if I don't, they win. Like this was 10 years after Board versus Brown or Brown versus Board of Education, whatever, right? 10 years after that, 54 was when it was passed that schools needed to be integrated. This was 64. 10 years later, and they were saying, her dad, who was a pastor, was like, let's, she said he went to 500 homes, knocking on doors, asking people to bring their kids, Black people to invite their kids to be the first ones to be integrated into this all-white school. And the parents were like, we are not going to put our kids through that kind of trauma at a place where they're not wanted. Right. They're not wanted. And eventually she was like, you know what? Anyway, I won't tell any more of her story, but she told her story. And as she told it, while she was telling it, I didn't choke up, really. I mean, I was feeling her pain and I was she's a brave little cookie. We're talking about courage and change, and it was just so beautiful. And then my next person came on a little early, and I was like, hey, you mind if I like bring her on? And it was a white lady. And I thought it would be kind of interesting because she, like you, was like, I am not trying to be on anybody's panel about diversity. So she had a really great story, but it was so amazing. So apparently I had interviewed someone that she knew on Thursday. They sent her an email saying, "Oh my God, it was so amazing! You got to talk to Traci." Um, uh, and so she said, "Okay, I'm in." And then I said, "Oh, I'd love to have you on the panel." She said, "I didn't know you wanted me to be on the panel." So apparently on that Friday, she sent an email saying, "I'm not going to do it." Um, and I didn't see the email. Maybe she just sent it to her white friend. I don't know because I didn't see that. But I saw an email on Monday saying my email did not sit well with me. I spoke to my daughter who's 9 years old, and it's funny how the truth from the mouths of babes comes out and helps you to bring clarity to align your actions with your values. And I kind of got choked up. So then as she started talking, and then I was hearing, this other woman who had talked, who had talked about her courage, and this white woman had just as much courage. I gotta put my white face on TV with maybe a bunch of black people that I'm not comfortable with, who may see me as an enemy. I don't even know. I don't even know what you're really asking me to do, but whatever it is, I'm in. So at some point, as I was talking to them, I literally just got choked up because it was just like it was like this gratitude, moment of gratitude. Like, wow, am I the luckiest person in the world to know such amazing people and to have these divine connections? I didn't know her. I knew her through five connections away. Am I the luckiest person in the world? And I just kind of got choked up at the sheer responsibility, the sheer accountability. Like I can't not do this. Even that was my position previously. So I only say that to say, yay that you were uncomfortable.
And I have to giggle because my daughter was sitting with me at the kitchen table when your text came in, and I said, first of all, and
I'm trying to see what did I text
I
you.
told her what you asked, and I said, first of all, I never used the term ally to describe myself. I what I said was I'm on a sort of personal journey uh, to try to learn all the ways that I might be dehumanizing others so that I can recognize that within myself and show up in the world with greater freedom and more love. And she said, Mom, you are literally a white-aged woman named Karin. Maybe you should be okay taking a risk.
Oh my goodness. See, I see. You see how lucky I am. I am lucky. I literally have a white Karen. You have to wait. You have to hear this. There's a video. There's a Zoom call. I swear to you, I can't make this stuff up. This is just Jesus. I swear to you. There's a white guy that I met through someone else. His name is Sam. Sam. I can't remember his last name. His name is Sam. I'm gonna pull it up real quick. Um, he is a white guy who apparently he's the whitest white guy in America. His name is Sam Drucker.
Okay.
The video is on YouTube right now. I think Sam. I got a white lady named Karen, and I have a white guy named Sam Drucker, who was his. He said they did his 23andMe.
Yeah.
You can trace his heritage back to the Caucasus Mountains, which is where Caucasian.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Where the word Caucasian came from. He said his parents did it. He said, so we're basically the whitest of the white guys because we're from where the white,
Wow.
the Caucasus, I'm sure I got the term wrong, but something like the Caucasus Mountains
Yeah. Yeah.
region, how they came up with this term to represent all Europeans, Caucasian, from
Nuts.
the Caucasian. And I didn't even think about you that you're a white woman named Karen, but how lucky am I to have the whitest white guy and a white Karen, both, both as a part of this initiative. And when I cried on the call with Dr. It wasn't like tears of joy. There were tears of, I've laughed and cried with other people because you guys, I'm just so, this is just, you gotta laugh, right? It's pretty funny. But I literally was so choked up by the time, this is like interview after interview after interview after interview. And I'm just like, how lucky am I?
Yeah.
How lucky am I to be in a position? And this book, like I said, we just published book number 1, which was an international bestseller in 8 countries, 14
Wow.
Amazon book categories. A book called Ignite Happiness, right?
Yeah.
Me as a part of other people, and now I was part of a compilation book. Now I'm creating my own compilation book. So you, White Karin, will have your own chapter. White Sam from the Caucasus Mountains, right? The whitest white woman I know, a white woman named Karin. Come on now,
Yeah, there you
blonde,
go.
beautiful, but you're here.
Yeah.
But you're here. But you're showing up. I'm glad we can have fun with this,
You
right?
know, showing up matters. Showing
So
up
talk, talk,
matters.
talk to the other white Karens out there why showing up matters.
Oh gosh. Um, well, this journey into my own internalized racism has been long and sometimes very painful. Um, I don't want to use the term hard because all the information is out there. It's not hard to find. There are amazing writers, so it's not hard to read. Um, I remember the first book on racial equity that I read was when I was an early teen. I might have been 11 or 12, and I read The Fire Next Time, James Baldwin. And it like changed my life. I'm this little
How
white
so?
girl in this
How so?
little white country town in New England. And there was so much that I didn't understand. I didn't understand, a lot of the language. Baldwin was such an elegant writer. But I knew that there was truth in there that was so outside of my, ability to even comprehend. This is early 70s, right? Um, and again, small New England town, so we were maybe a decade behind the rest of the country. So when I say hard, I don't mean, I mean emotionally hard.
Oh,
It's emotionally hard to see institutions that you might have counted on your whole life, that you might have looked up to your whole life, that you've been taught to respect, to learn the truth of all that they are, to learn the truth about your country. And to learn the truth about yourself, to realize that you grew up in this racist, classist, sexist, tremendously bigoted culture where you didn't ask for that, you
I was
didn't
just gonna
ask to
say.
be,
So,
you know but you have to recognize that you drank that water, you breathed that air. And so it's not only looking outward and that the change has to take place out there, right? Yes, lots of out there we have to change. Lots of systems, lots of departments, but the hardest part is the inside stuff. That's the hard stuff to look at, right? That's the stuff that you don't want to admit. The little bit of ugly within all of us, the racism that we, the racial internalized racial superiority that we were spoon fed. So that stuff's tough. That stuff's hard.
wow. So I just learned something. First of all, I didn't know what. I haven't read the book by Baldwin, so I can't wait to read that. You got to tell me
Oh,
some
you have to.
learnings. And then you just said internalized.
Racial superiority.
So tell us about that. Like, so again, I'm a bit of an optimist.
Uh-huh.
Dr. Joy Hardiman said I'm a bit naive. She said there's some naivete in what you say,
Yeah.
right? So I believe everyone's good. She eventually she eventually came across to my side when I mentioned I believe everyone's good, even those people who harm you. If you, I feel like we must believe in humanity. That there's fear, there's these motivating
Oh,
factors
certainly.
when I
Yeah.
think about my experience was horrific, and there was no reason for it to be the way it was, and I just wanted to make sure no one else had that same experience. That was kind of my driving force inside of Microsoft. Like, how do we fix things so that no one else has to have this same experience that I had, because it's traumatizing. How do we fix it? At the end of the day, I think there were such good leaders. There were such good people. I think Satya Nadella is one of the best um, CEOs in the country. I think under his watch, he's not aware. I have to believe. Hear me. I have to believe that he's not aware. Through this process, nobody's going to be able to say they're unaware of what's happening in business. And so at
Well,
this point, that's going to be a different conversation. So once the level of awareness is laid out, and once we're very clear what we're saying is happening, if companies choose not to then say, oh, well, maybe I should be doing something different. Oh, perhaps there should be a different level of activation. Oh, perhaps people that when we use this term unconscious bias, when we use the terms unequal performance standards, and we train people on it in HR, there are lives that are dramatically being impacted. It's not academic for us. It's
right.
impactful. So that's basically one of the objectives. It's a lot happening, but I'm being very strategic about number one, stop corporate chokeholds, right? Increase equity in schools and inclusion, right?
Yeah.
There's a ton of things we can do. I'm being very specific about certain things. And the easiest one to me, the first one to me that I'm focused on, even though we're moving them all in the same direction, is this concept of stopping corporate chokehold, ending this idea of unconscious bias and letting it be just a thing that happens, oh, but not like the impact of the thing that happens. So when you talk about internalized racial
Superiority.
superiority,
Yeah.
talk about that as relates to the problems, like the problems that happen in business, this unconscious bias, these unequal performance standards. Talk about that as it relates to those challenges.
Uh, one of the best ways that I can sort of describe it is to talk about the parallels with sexism and
Please.
internalized uh, uh, gender dysphoria.
Well,
Uh,
great, because I get both of those. I get the
yeah,
internalized
you
racial and
do.
the
Aren't you
internalized gender
lucky?
ones. So yay, please tell
Yay!
us.
No. Um, well, I mean, all of us see. There's this completely bizarre dehumanizing that happens throughout our culture in all of these various ways where there's this fake evil hierarchy and there are all these rules about where you fit on which one and all the different ways that you can fall short in some area. You can be too tall, you can be, not, I mean, there's a million ways. You can not be able-bodied. um, there's a million ways that you are placed in these multiple hierarchies, and they're all dehumanizing and they're all damaging to everybody on it. Um, so when I think about sexism, and I think about the world that I grew up in, right, where my parents were right out of Mad Men. That was the world I grew up in. That was
You're assuming I've ever watched Mad Men, which I have not.
okay. Well, it's
Sorry.
it's a very male dominated, white male dominated culture. The women stayed home. They would often be fired when they got pregnant. Um, uh, I remember not being able to get a credit card. I remember once bringing my truck. I was driving a truck at the time, driving it because I was in the country, driving a truck in to get fixed, and I was wondering when they were going to start the work. And they said, oh, we hadn't heard from your husband yet to approve the work. I mean, this is never met him, never saw him, barely knew he existed, been going to them for years. That's the world. You need a male's permission to be fully human. I internalized all that stuff, right? I was a little girl when they fed me that. So is it any, it's no surprise that I grew up believing that men were smarter and stronger. And I've had to fight that my whole life to sort of stand up and say, no, my answer is as good. I am as good as. And the same is true with racism. Except this time I grew up a little white girl in a middle-class family where the systems were meant for me. And I bought into the whole mediocrity. You rise due to your ability, right? I believed that. That's a fable. That they made that up. So those are the things that I have to unlearn. I have to recognize within myself, I have to unlearn them, and then I have to relearn. And I have to imagine a world where none of that stuff lives anymore.
So Karin, that's beautiful. I'm gonna slow you down because I think you're so much further on this journey than you think you are. I've spoken to many people, and several of them look like you and don't sound like you. Your level of wokeness, and I'm just gonna call it that, is much more.
Scary.
I know. So just hold on to your britches because I'm gonna have you break it down because I know for a fact 3 of the white ladies that I spoke to just last week would not be able to talk about what you just described um, as the fable of. Can you talk about the fable? What fable are you referring to?
Well,
If it's still their truth, if it's still their truth, you're talking to that white woman and
yeah,
explain to them what do you
yeah.
what are what's one of the things that you've come to realize that you were raised to believe that is not true. That's
Oh,
important.
it's terrifying. I mean, it's hard to even imagine the stuff I was raised with now. I mean,
As it relates to race.
with regards to race.
Yes,
Yeah,
please. Tell
yeah.
me. I'm
I
all
mean,
ears.
yeah, you remember the cartoons from the 60s?
I was born in
How,
'69, so which ones are you referring to?
oh, well, I mean, so they were still showing cartoons actually that were made in the 50s, in the early
Uh,
60s when I was growing up. Unbelievably racist. Um, uh, you know, Indians kind of like did not exist. They were ancient, fictional characters almost, right? Native Americans, right? Uh,
so the travesty
as
that
part
so
of
the
this
travesty that
is
occurred
that
in
they
American
always,
history. So basically, you said we mean we didn't even accept
no,
the
no.
truth
I mean,
of the travesty that
in
occurred
order
to
to
Native
justify
Americans.
taking people's land, you have to you have to
Dehumanize them.
disappear, right? Which they tried both physically and metaphysically. So so there was that.
Can you say that one more time, please? Can you just back up and say what you just said about making people disappear? Can you just say that again? And I'll tell you why in a minute. Can you expound on
And
that and repeat it?
that in order to justify, stealing people's land, they have to no longer exist, right? And white people tried to do that physically, didn't completely succeed. So they had to finish the job metaphysically by
Tell
making
us,
them disappear
tell us
and
more.
become, just elements of history as opposed to living, breathing human beings today.
Dehumanizing.
It's dehumanized. Yes. There's so much dehumanization. That seems to be the dangers of dehumanization, seem to be the lessons that humans stubbornly refuse to learn. It
It's
just
funny.
seems that we have this habit, and if we can perceive, you know, others to be lower than us in this constructed fantasy hierarchy, then we can feel some kind of safety, perhaps, and see the freedom when you can free yourself from that type of dehumanizing thought. That's the only way to be a free human being. But in order to do that, it's scary, right? So you need, because it carries with it responsibilities.
Yes.
So very often, I mean, I think that's why this sort of voyage is not linear. You know, you go round and round and up and down and back and forth because it's hard. It's a hard emotional work, and it carries with it responsibility, and that's scary. The whole thing is, it can be scary when you're very, very used to having a very
Mm,
secure, nice little bed made right here for you. You've got to reject
wow.
that.
Wow. And the reason I got kind of wanted you to go back and say that is this whole initiative. I mentioned that we're doing this whole video production, this whole video documentary throughout the process, which this video is going to be part of. We're also writing a book. There's a whole series, that's being written, these concepts being all laid out as a part of this journey. What's super exciting is with the first book that I wrote in this Ignite Happiness, the fact that it became an international bestseller with all these women from around the world is because I write really well. I mean, I do this, one of my gifts. I'd be happy to say my first draft is actually pretty good normally, but I wrote very academically, right? It was just here are the facts. Here's what you need to know. Here's the lessons learned. Here's how to do it. But I didn't necessarily put my feeling in it. I didn't go there, right? I didn't allow myself to feel. It was actually in writing in this story that I realized the depth of how important it is to write about your feelings, to tell your story fully, like Brene Brown says, right? Stories you own, you get to write the ending. And stories you don't own us. So I own that story. That is my story to own, and it is my story to write the ending to, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm
Right.
basically writing a new ending. But until I did that writing and did that work and went through that process, I wrote my own solo book. And I decided to condense it and put it into a story in a compilation book because, first of all, the women were amazing, the men were, the whole group was amazing, but I didn't know how to write and really connect with people, kind of connect. And we have to change hearts and minds. Nobody wants the facts. They want to know, what do you feel? Who are you? So the book, the title of this whole initiative is called How to Become Visible.
Mm.
And that to me,
Mm.
I think about my personal experience with inequities and exclusion. I think about living in Florida when Trayvon Martin was murdered, and my two best friends lived less than 5 minutes away from him, where that incident occurred. I think about how we went through that whole process and marched lovingly, peacefully, and the
Mm.
outcome was tragic. Peacefully marched, we peacefully protested. His parents were amazing. With those things, time after time after time, what that tells a whole country, it's a whole generation of Black children. You don't matter.
Mhm.
You don't matter. You're invisible to us.
And you fight that internalization your whole life.
Fortunately, I wasn't raised thinking that. Fortunately, I'd probably be. I mean, I don't think I'd be fighting like I'm fighting right now because I'm like, I just know it's wrong, and I don't understand why. I'm confused. I started this whole initiative with confusion. You're good people, but you're doing horrible things. How could those two things exist? They basically short circuited my brain eventually. Eventually, I just could not survive. I couldn't thrive. I literally had like I was short circuited. Like I had to believe that they were good people. They were doing horrible things. Did I tell you I had interns come to me about to commit suicide from Microsoft, saying, Miss Traci, why do they do this to us? At one point, I was like, because they can, you know. But as opposed to going home in shame, let me call your mom and let her know that you're fighting a system that exists. There is a system in place where you are not allowed to be successful, even if you've done everything right. You, some people, some people will be successful. Some people will be chewed up and turned out, and that is what happened to you. So please let me call your mom. So you don't. There's no shame in what happened to you. You know how many mamas I had to call as an intern. But when someone's like wanting to commit suicide, bubbling, boohoo, crying because they first one in their family to go to college, first one to excel in college, get a job at Microsoft, right, or any of these companies. Microsoft is no different. I think they're probably even better at prepared to be. I think with Satya at the helm and somebody else, forcing our leader of diversity to do something different and think outside of the box. I think having her on this journey with us would be huge for them. Um, being willing to think outside of the box and do something different, I think they're going to be amazing. I think the reason I'm talking about it is I'm trying to, the law of attraction, the secret. I'm bringing them into this existence. But that's going to be my celebration. Internationally best-selling book, all these multiple books that are coming out. My true win, and whether it happens or not, I'm already happy. Like I'm an Ignite Happiness coach. But that would be the ultimate to me, and seeing that an organization as big as Microsoft that proclaims their quest for equity and inclusion could actually be willing to do the right thing, think outside the box, and be willing to create a safe space for everyone to thrive. That's the quote from their own diversity statement.
Wow.
So my question to you is, as it relates to this concept of becoming visible, that was your word. As a white woman, you talk about this position of privilege. How would you help another white person, non-Black person,
Right.
rationalize what's happened historically without feeling guilt or shame? Because this isn't about that at
Right.
all.
Right. Well, that's
It's more
what
about
I said.
yeah.
It was the culture I grew up in, right? So there's no shame for me from me in that, right? I didn't choose it. I couldn't stop it if I wanted to. It's something that happens to you. It's like, it was like learning how to use a knife and fork in the US. Kids learn how to do that. They didn't ask to. They didn't have any choice in the matter. It's just the culture teaches you things.
And what did it teach you about being white in America?
And so as a white person, when I finally got that, that racism, the term racism has multiple definitions, right? And the one that a lot of white people use is the racism of the KKK, the violent, right, unapologetic, in your face proponents of white supremacy, right? And a lot of white people can pretty easily deny they're not that, right? But it has other meanings, right? So then there's the racism of systems, a racist culture, a racist system, a racist organization, right? And that all has to do with different outcomes depending upon the color of your skin, right? And nothing else. So if the color of your skin can pretty accurately determine the outcome, predict what the outcome is going to be, it's pretty clear that's a racist system, right? Again, white people can be like, okay, I can get that. Then there's the hard one, like I said, the internal, biases and definitions, this often unconscious, racial superiority that white people were brought up with in the country. I mean, we were spoon-fed that. I remember giving my boss, who's, like I said, a brilliant Black man with a very different background than I ever had, and I gave him Waking Up White to read. And he kind of looked at me like, really? And I said, no, you want to read this. And I wanted him to read it because I had been trying to express to him, like, one of the primary things that I got out of that book is that you cannot underestimate how clueless white people are.
Okay, your assignment on 9/9 is to bring that book and give us some summary of what you're talking about. That's what I'm saying. I had to assume that they didn't know any better.
Well, and the thing is, it's not necessarily white people's fault.
Right.
It's because the system, the culture that we were brought up in hides things. It can only perpetuate itself if it keeps white people clueless to the evil that they're perpetuating.
Say that again, Karin. Say that again.
The system itself is set up.
The system of what? The system in general.
Our culture, our racist culture, our white supremacist culture, is set up to keep the evil of white supremacy hidden from white people so that it can self-perpetuate. So to come up against some of this stuff, when you do even just some basic research, I mean, you don't have to go far to find phenomenal books on this stuff, you know. It's a paradigm shift within you. And so what I would say to white people who are beginning that journey is to take a lot of deep breaths, start with something easy. You know, there are a lot of wonderful books that are talked are spoken with love and compassion.
Name two, Karen. You're a white woman named Karen, and you're asking people to do some easy reading. So give us a couple.
Do some easy reading. Start out.
You have any
Recognize that
suggestions?
it is a long voyage. It's going to be hard. You're going to learn things about your history, about the history of the United States, about like I said, these organizations and systems that that you were brought up to revere, and you're going to see a side to them that's ugly, and it's hard and painful to see those things for the first time. And I would just say, stay with it. Put it down if you have to for a short time, you know, call a friend, whatever you got to do, just go back and go back. And there's some really, really easy things I'd say. I'd suggest, if you're a Facebook user, there are excellent sites, you know, and from lots of different perspectives around the world. And start reading little excerpts. You know, sign up for Medium. You know about Medium, where they post all kinds of articles from lots of different perspectives from all over the world. Sign up, check off race. You want to learn a little bit about race. They'll send 5-minute articles to you, you know, 3 minutes, 2 minutes that takes to read. They'll send 5 a day to your inbox. Just start reading them. Perspectives from different people who have very different lives than you do, people who have different experiences than you do, who see the same situation very, very differently because of everything that they know that you don't, because your view is partial, right? So, I mean, so that's an easy way to learn and to grow. I mean, you're doing it at home, you're sitting down in your bed before night. Oh, I'm going to read an article from about, you know, I wonder what the Native American perspective is on this. Look it up. There's 12 sites you can pick. You know, I mean, we've got the world at our fingertips now.
So, I love you. I love you so much. White Karen, my friend Karen Duval. I'm only calling you White Karen because you called yourself White Karen, but
Yeah.
I love that. You said your daughter said that first.
Yeah.
She said,
You're literally a middle-aged white woman named Karen.
you kind of got it. And Traci's your friend, and she's doing some great work. You kind of got to show up.
You
Thanks,
kind of got to
Mom.
do it. Okay.
And what I love about you is you as woke as you are, for you to share with me. I'm trying to see. I was trying to find your text. Like you weren't ready. As
Yeah.
woke as you are, you think you're not ready? How is that possible? What hope does a white woman have who really hasn't done any of this work?
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm still a learner. I'm still growing. I'm still learning. You know, I still find things within me that embarrass me, and things that
Karen,
I have to
I just
like,
want you to
oh,
know, I
sorry,
just
man,
find that
boy, did I blow that one. You know, I mean, it's
so
hard.
now I'm gonna call to your adaptive leadership, and you know the concept of growth mindset, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna call those two things into play because we're inviting people to do some work, to do some learnings that aren't going to be easy. You just said they're not going to be easy. Some of it's going to be painful for you to just know that, oh my God, just you know, no guilt and shame, but it's going to be
No.
maybe shocking if you've never heard some of these, you know, truths before.
Right.
So my question to you is, as it relates to adaptive leadership, and as it relates to just this general concept of learning and growing, this growth mindset. So basically, a mistake by definition, right? You got to try, you got to lean in. A mistake is just another opportunity to learn and get it right the next time, right? So
Right.
what advice would you say to people on resilience, kind of taking some, having some extra grit, staying with it? Um, when you guys do these adaptive leadership type
Yeah.
initiatives, and you're asking people to change their beliefs, their thoughts.
For me,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, um, I think leaning into self-compassion as opposed to trying to white knuckle it through with grit
Oh,
might be more productive.
I don't know what that means. I'm black. So
Um,
you're talking about self compassion for white
self-compassion.
people when
Yeah.
they hear that basically. What is the discovery? Take us through your thought process. So discovering that, like you said, what you thought was true isn't necessarily true, and
Yeah.
kind of walk us through that full
Um,
circle. Like talk out loud as you would to yourself if you kind of think about your white woman Karen journey of
right.
discovery. What would you say? Like just kind of take us through that on a journey, and what
You
you were
know,
saying to yourself along the way. That self compassion. How does
uh,
that look?
there early in my journey, I probably uh, talked about race with Black people that I knew or met or were, met at a conference or whatever, and we'd sit and chat. And I think I probably did so very clumsily. I'm sure I did. I think back on, one discussion that I started that, my eyes rolled in the back of my head. I was like, why, really, you could have looked that up. Why did you have to ask somebody? Um, uh, and people were very kind to me for the most part. People were kind and supportive, and um, I think I was lucky that way. But certainly, nobody had to be.
But can I just
I
interject
think,
and say we're creating? That's what we're creating is a community of kindness and love and positive psychology. So there's no bad question. You will be loved. Every question will
yeah,
be embraced.
I
That's
think that that is something that white people who have at least started their journey can offer other white people. An ear that says, "Yeah, I know that sucks, doesn't it?" Learning that, yeah, that's hard, isn't it? Learning that about the police force or about, banking regulations or about, yeah, whatever it is. There's so many systems that are so
mm-hmm.
messed up. you know, um, so I think that if you're going to start this journey, it might be helpful for if I was going to give advice to other white people, to start with a white person who's already sort of begun, and ask if you could ask them questions before you go and pester your Black friends.
Well, I'm gonna say you almost need to co-create the
You do.
reality. You have to start building the connections sooner. So I'm gonna agree to disagree, and all opinions matter and are valued. Um, but I hear you, and I think it's important because there's a comfort level. You want to be comfortable at least with the person you're talking to, so that you're asking questions, and then you're basically saying ease your way into some other conversations. I love that. I mean,
Well,
I think.
not only that, but you can be. I mean, you can do damage talking about race before you have any experience with it. I mean,
What
I
do you
wouldn't
mean? What do
want.
you mean?
I
I'm
mean,
naive. Remember, I
well,
was just told that I'm a little
what
naive.
if I said something that, well, you'd probably just, push me on the shoulder, say, Karen, come on, wake up, whatever. I mean,
Well, you and I, because
early
I
on,
trust you, yeah,
yeah. But we had a
and you
relationship.
trust me.
Yeah, we did. We trust each other, right?
Mhm,
We
mhm.
have. So that makes a big difference. But but I wouldn't want to, and I wouldn't want to offend in any way. And I think it's easy to say something that comes out hurtful, and is because it's based in white supremacy. You don't even know it yet. You don't even know it yet, but it is. So um, so my advice would be to get to get to do some work on your own or with other white people so that you're less likely to offend your friends who are black and brown.
Okay, so I'm going to officially disagree with you. I think I have to take a position
Okay.
lovingly, right? I think I have to kind of take a position because the whole point of
Yeah.
us co-creating a solution is for us all to be vulnerable and loving and kind together, because black people need to practice talking to white people too,
Okay. You guys get a lot more
right?
practice. Yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is, in as a part of this bigger than me movement, we're laying out very clear kind of protocols around, what loving means. We're like literally creating something called a bigger than me
Wow.
moment. A bigger than me moment is basically a pause. Like when I think something is happening that feels like unconscious bias or unequal performance standards or whatever it is, or if I'm a white person, you can call it too. It's not like a black person calling a white person. Like if you see something, say something. Most times people don't know what to say. So it's just like, let's take a bigger. This feels like a bigger than me moment, and it should be yay. Like the
Yeah.
companies are going to be judged on how many bigger than me moments that they're willing to document and embrace. Because a bigger than me moment says I'm willing to not continue to do the same thing. It doesn't mean anything came of it. Is you willing to pause and have a conversation? You willing to pause and do an assessment? You willing to say, maybe this train should not just keep moving down this particular track. We should just pause, right? If you're the cruise ship, right? There's no track, right? We were going this way. This feels like a bigger than me moment. I think, well, whatever it is, right? As long as we can kind of course correct along the way, that's the adaptive leadership part, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Together, like you said, the
it's the
co-creation
it's
and
the
that.
co-creation that really I think is where the value is going to come in, because you're never it's never going to be safe if you start someone out thinking that they got to be around other white people to be comfortable, then they'll never be comfortable with black people. It's
No.
about those
Yeah.
micro,
That,
you know what
I
I'm
guess
saying? It's
that's
about
not what
those,
I meant, but you're
right? You
right.
know what I mean? But it's
Yeah.
like about those micro connections that start early on. It's like teaching someone to, teaching, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like it's starting out with some level of engagement, so that thing that's going to happen eventually. I got to talk to some black people at some point. God help me, right? I got to get my act together. You, Miss Woke, would never be comfortable. You still don't think you're comfortable. You
Right.
still don't think you were worthy to be on a conversation, eh, eh, you know, as a part of a panel that we're hosting nationwide. You're like, not me. I'm not ready. I'm still on the journey,
Yeah.
right? So if you get people to think that they gotta be on it, be further down the path, where does it begin or end? I don't use the N word. I mean, like, at what point do you get to talk to a black person? When does it say to talk to black people?
Yeah.
The
Yeah. No,
win. This
you have a point, and I know I am
that
blessed.
came out of love. You
Yeah.
said that because you're like the most loving kind Karen that I know.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, how lucky can I be? I do have a white guy from Caucasia, the Caucasus Mountains, and I got a white Karen who are the most woke white people I think I know. I am the luckiest person. You make it too easy. Like I said, this is God's business. This initiative is just divine. Our book will be launching in December. When I say we're on a mission, ding, 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 ding. These sessions are happening. The trainings at the station, volume one of the lessons learned, and all these videos and all these things. So I'm really glad to have you a part of it, because I could never be white Karen.
Thank you.
Now white Karen is now gonna take on a positive. White Karen is now gonna take on a positive
Uh-huh.
label, because the white Karen is part of the bigger than me movement is woke. That woman is woke, and you're still on the journey. So that
I'm
means we've
determined.
taken white Karen, and she is now officially, you're on the journey, Karen. You're woke. Okay, so did I have you define the word ally yet? Did you define ally?
Um,
I've had so many interviews today, I'm confused as what word it is. But can you define the word ally?
oh, geez. Um, I suppose to go back to my original statement about um, identifying within myself and within any organizations and within any systems, anything that dehumanizes others, and identifying those things and struggling against them. Um, and the other thing I'll add, I remember a friend once told me, and it was about allyship, and they says if, you know, if someone's getting, you know, pelted with stones, if you're not close enough to get pelted with the stones too, then, you know, then you're not close enough.
Mm, that's close.
And that's close. So this is where I'm saying that there's that fear. There is a cost to bucking the status quo. There's a cost that you have to accept. And that if you're not paying a price for the way you show up in the world for social justice, then you're not close enough.
Wow. Woke Karen. This is woke. Where's your daughter? Is your daughter home? Is your daughter there? Can you please bring her? Can you call her to the forefront?
She's in the back room.
Okay, I need to see this woman. I need to talk at some point. Let her know we're gonna have to bring her in on a conversation another day, because the fact that you are here and a part of this is divine intervention. Seriously, the fact that I mean, I adore you. There's no way what you're saying is not going to change hearts and minds, and that's really where we are in this process. That's really what this whole initiative is about, changing hearts and minds. And you're willing to be vulnerable and tell your story. Talk about being compassionate. I don't know if I heard enough compassion in what you were saying, maybe because I interrupted you. But can you go back to, you said for white people, as you go on this journey, you need to be, you know, compassionate with yourself. Like there's no blame, there's no shame. It's just learning and doing and coming and showing up differently.
Oh, I remember the first time I heard a white male when we were talking, and this is a man that I know to fight for social justice on lines. He's getting hit by stones. He's a tremendously loving human being to everyone around him. Happens to be a pastor who's trying to live the talk. And we were walking, and he and the first time I heard him say "I'm a racist," kind of threw me early in my journey. And so we had some of those conversations about you know where he was, that he realized that, and he's maybe 20 years older than I am, so his indoctrination was even that much more significant. So that's what I mean, where so he had to learn to say that with compassion. He didn't ask to be, you know, born white in an incredibly racist society. You know, he just was. It is what it is. He wasn't to blame for that. But you're responsible then to learn and grow and try to continue to learn and grow so that you don't ooze that evil out into the world, so it splashes on people around you. I mean, that's your responsibility, so that you can show up with love, and what you're giving out is kindness, right? So
wow, I love it. Now you know the reason this is so important. So the beauty of this Bigger Than Me movement, this Bigger Than Me Success Series, is that we're over time. I just looked at that. Are you okay? Should we stop?
Yeah.
Should we stop? So can we end in 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want you to close with two things.
Okay.
One of them is this concept of how do you, and maybe you don't, and that's an answer too, but how do you help someone that doesn't want to be helped, or who doesn't believe that there's a problem to be solved?
I have relatives on Facebook, you know. I think that asking loving questions, you know, getting, you know, so that they're not accusatory, I think that it's a slow process. I don't think you're going to, turn somebody around in one conversation. I think it involves, trust and compassion. And, what I've tried is asking questions. Sometimes humor can be helpful. Um, Sometimes sharing a personal story can be helpful. Um, Sometimes uh, trying to equate a situation with something the person might have a personal experience with so that they can get a little, oh, it's kind of like that, huh? Oh, all right. Just you're looking for little cracks, right?
Mm.
You don't have to get all the way there on a conversation.
I love that. Just
Just
kind of chisel it away.
little cracks, to let a new thought in or a point of
Ah.
view in, or and you never know, how much that's going to do, because sometimes those little tiny cracks can grow. 2 years later, all of a sudden, you know, something makes sense to them. So when someone is quite rigid and does not want to hear you, you have to go about that completely differently. Um, and I mean, there are people that say it's not worth the time, right? I mean, you've read that. There are definitely leaders who say don't worry about those people. We got to change the systems now. Fair enough.
Tell me what you mean by that. Maybe I think I missed a. What do you mean? What do you say? Not
Um,
worth the time? No, oh, not worth the time.
Not worth the
I thought.
time trying to convince white people who are very rigid
Oh,
and
okay.
say there's no such thing as racism or whatever.
So
uh,
basically, help those who want to be helped and keep it moving, and
and keep
and the
moving.
rest of the
Yeah.
world will.
So there is that uh, argument to be made. um, uh, I'm not giving up. I'm going to try to make
I'm
inroads
not
where I
giving up
can.
either. I'm not giving up either. And I appreciate you more than you know. The last question and the last thing, you have children. Do you have grandchildren as well, or just children?
No, not yet. Can't wait.
Can't wait, right? So, what would you say to someone with children or grandchildren? You raise kids. How old are you? What's your youngest?
Youngest is 24.
Okay. So you raise your children and you're ready to have a conversation. If they popped out with a grandchild right now, you'd be ready to have a conversation about race with
Yeah.
your children. Now, for those people who I've had some people say, I want to get involved because I want my kids, my grandkids to be raised in a better world than I want to say that I was part of making the world a better place.
Yeah.
What would you say to um, a child today if you had a grandchild and she watched George Floyd get extinguished,
Oh
accidentally
my
saw it
God.
on TV, and was like, what is that conversation like? What could that be like? I'm gonna have you talk to a white child. I'm gonna have you talk to a black child because you're loving and you're kind, and I know your heart's gonna land.
Gosh,
But you gotta break it down for
I
children.
almost don't know how to answer that, because it depends so much about the particular child and the particular context. Um,
So let's just say
Things
they're.
that I would have said to my son, for example, when my son
Mhm.
was 4, that I probably wouldn't have said to my daughter until she was 8. You
So let's
know,
forget the number. So sorry, let's forget the age because I don't have kids. I have
uh,
no recollection to what is appropriate. So just say, what's an average
I
age where kids have some perception and are able to comprehend? Is it 8? Is it 10? So now we're talking to 10-year-olds. Again, I don't have kids, so God only knows. 13, maybe they're 13.
well, I would talk about the history of of humans, and like I said, how historically human beings have dehumanized each other in all kinds of horrible, violent, sometimes violent ways, and how it's our job to evolve past that. That's that's why we're here on this planet. We got to get beyond that dehumanization of each other. That's the only way that all of us are going to be, or any of us are going to be free to self-actualize in any meaningful way, right? So I probably go at it that way.
I love that.
And to say that there are people and there are systems where we live that still function that way, and that we have to be aware and we have to see and we have to do what we can to change them.
I love it. I love that. Are you done? Are you drained? Okay. And I'm going to stop. And I adore you. I love you. You are my favorite Karen of all Karens. I am so glad to have a white Karen
Your
because now
favorite white
people are
Karen.
you. But no, you're like the how there's the good witch and there's the bad witch. They have demonized a white Karen. We are going to definitely elevate the idea of a white Karen because you are
You're
a
sweetheart.
perfect representation. All white Karens are not bad. As a matter of fact,
Oh gosh,
Karen is
do not start a
continuously evolving.
hashtag.
We'll think of
I,
something good.
you know
You help
what?
me think of
I'm taking one for the team as far as my
good,
name's concerned.
good
I mean,
white Karens.
if it if it
Yeah.
was actually going to help, they could use my full name. You know,
What? It's like that. KD in
you
the
got to take some
house.
stones. You got to take some stones. If you're not taking stones, you're not close enough.
Wow. Well, Karen Duval in the house. I am grateful for you. I am thankful for you. I look forward to some continued conversation. You have definitely shown up today. This was a out of the ballpark home run, slam dunk. Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Tracy.
And then go hug your daughter for me and say,
Okay, I
Tracy said
will.
thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks.
Bye bye.